This is the Reviewing Network Live, a weekly stream of consciousness recording session where I sit back with you folks out there, talk about some of the big news stories from the past week, and some other things I found that might be of amusement to you out there. I think you might get a kick out of it. Now, these are more like audio podcasts and are much longer than my usual videos and are also, for the most part, unedited and will contain some foul language. So, if you're easily offended by that, I advise you to maybe step back a bit, maybe go somewhere else. But hey, if you're up to the challenge, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Thanks. And for the 156th time, we are live on the Reviewing Network Studios. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Reviewing Network Live. Yeah, we're in a situation here that I haven't really been in a while here, honestly, because, I really don't have anything for you this week. It was kind of a dead news week in terms of, like, big projects announced and all that. There's a couple things we're going to dive into here, but, yeah, really, this is a very slow week for news in particular and stuff to talk about here. But there are, like I said, there are a couple things I'm going to get to here. So much so that we're not even going to really do an opening monologue, honestly. We're just going to go right into the weekend box office and then the couple things that we have here. Hopefully we can get on out of here within an hour, so keep your fingers crossed on that. But anyway, let's get to the weekend box office, which really wasn't all that significant. Everything you kind of expected to fall into place did kind of fall into place in particular here. There's a couple of interesting things we're talking about here, so let's go ahead and get right to it. And let's get to what could be a very intriguing battle here between these two new releases from last week. Starting off at number 5, we have The End of Oak Street, which dropped 57% from last week. Brought in $9 million, bringing its 2-week total to about $38 million, pretty much, $37.9 million. If you include worldwide numbers, it's up to $85.9 million. The budget on this is like $90 million to $100 million, so it's still got a long way to go to eventually get to that mark overall. I think it'll make it back once the international numbers are kicked in here, but that brought in $9 million. However, the number 4 movie, Paw Patrol the Dino movie, has $9.1 million. And that had an unusually significant drop-off for a kids' film, 55.1%, which, considering we haven't had a big family film out there for the kids since Toy Story 5, Minions and Monsters and Moana, that is kind of surprising that the numbers went down, actually, for that movie in particular. But Paw Patrol the Dino movie has brought in $35.4 million after 2 weeks. It did cross the $100 million mark overall, and it was not an expensive movie to make at all. These particular films usually aren't not that, so let me see what the budget was for this. $40 million. So yeah, they made their money back and then some. They'll make it back eventually, but I'm actually trying to see, how's this doing compared to the other Paw Patrol movies? I'm kind of curious on that, so give me 1 second. Looking at the numbers, it is actually a little bit lower than the Paw Patrol Dino, the Mighty movie was, but keep in mind that the second weekend for that was, or as Box Office Mojo puts it, Indigenous Peoples Day weekend, so that means kids had an extra day off of school, so that movie got to $40 million, but now the kids are going back to school, so that would explain why the box office is a little bit lower for Paw Patrol the Dino movie here. But it really could be something where it could swap around. We've had this a couple times over the last couple of weeks, so right now Paw Patrol's ahead of The End of Oak Street, but that could swap around once the final estimates come into play here, so something to keep in mind for tomorrow when the actual numbers come out. But let's go ahead and move on to number 3, still hanging in there, and that is The Odyssey, which brought in $19.5 million this weekend, only dropping 17%. Actually had the smallest drop-off of the entire weekend for all the releases out there. $539 million after 6 weeks. It has made $1.4 billion. What can you say, man? Christopher Nolan, man. So, anyway, let's go ahead and get to the number 2 movie, and this is this is a movie where you kind of expect it to be in this type of area here in particular. Insidious Out of the Further, the newest release this weekend, $25.3 million. Again, these movies, I've talked about it before, how they are not the highest budgeted movies overall, and I really don't believe this movie in particular had that big of a budget in general here, because mostly there's not a big cast involved in here. So I'm going to take a guess, maybe, I don't know, before I look at the number here, 15 to 20 million. I was right in there, $18 million overall, and it's already made $60 million worldwide, so, hey, They did what they had to do, so we're getting another Insidious movie coming up soon, which that may be good for the box office, but in terms of the films themselves, I have to admit that I saw this one. These movies really get kind of bad once we get past 3. They're mostly forgettable, honestly, and this one definitely was. I saw this yesterday. I didn't even bother doing a talking about the movies for it, because honestly, there's really not much more you could say about this film that hasn't already been said about it. It's just forgettable, and it's funny because when the first Insidious movie came out 15 years ago, that was coming at a time when most horror movies were not that great overall, very early on in the decade. But as the years have gone on, horror has definitely gotten a lot better, especially now that we're living in kind of this golden age of horror films right now. Insidious is kind of like what those bad early 2010s horror movies are kind of like now. It's just like they just keep repeating the same things over and over again. Even franchises that were around that time, Final Destination, found life the year before and made a successful movie out of it. Even the Conjuring films still have a lot of fun to them overall. They're still entertaining to watch. This one, though, Insidious, it feels like they're just really kind of running out of ideas at this point. But like I said, these movies are cheaply made, so obviously they're going to keep making money no matter what happens. So there you go. Take that for what you will. But let's get to the number one movie this week, which really should come as no surprise to anybody, and that is, of course, Spider-Man Brand New Day. 44.8% drop-off, bringing its 4-week total now. Its 4-week total now is at $854.9 million domestically, and it has crossed $2.2 billion worldwide. This weekend brought in $39 million. So it's still in contention potentially to get to $1 billion, but it's starting to peter out a little bit here. But the good news is that there really is not a whole lot of stiff competition for the number one spot, so it should at least stick around there, at least to try to at least get to that point there. I don't think it's going to make it at this point, but it's going to come close. It's going to be really, really close to do so. But what I think is kind of interesting about what's happening with Spider-Man Brand New Day right now is the fact that, it's still continuing to do good business overall. And there was a thing that came out this week that, there's this art book that was out for Spider-Man Brand New Day, and they're talking about how they used AI, generative AI, to create some of the designs for New York City. And that led people to go like, oh, Spider-Man Brand New Day is now bad now. Shame, shame. And while I will admit that I'm a little bit disappointed they used AI for it, it didn't say anything about them actually using it in the final film. So here's the thing with AI. AI is not good. But when it's used in the smallest ways possible, or ways where you have no choice but to use it, there's a couple examples of that. Late Night with the Devil, when they used the late night cards for that show the leading character was on. Ted Season 2, where they used Seth MacFarlane as Bill Clinton and made a replica of Bill Clinton using generative AI. That looked great. And this, where they're just using it for the behind-the-scenes stuff here, it really is not as big of a deal overall. Like, I think that the overall, I'm not saying, I am not trying to say that I'm turning around on AI. I'm just saying that, like, as long as the product itself is good and isn't some regurgitative garbage like a lot of AI slop is. And again, this wasn't actually used in the actual film. They used it for the behind the scenes process. So, I mean, it's a complicated thing, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend like Spider-Man Brand New Day is now a terrible movie, because nobody should be thinking that at this point. It's still a really good movie. It's still an enjoyable film. I mean, it kind of sucks they used AI, but it should not be something that should take away from the film itself, because it's not something you saw in the final product. But again, going back to what I thought about the box office overall, it's at $854.9 million. So it's about $149 million away from getting to about $150 million, a little over $150 million away from about $150 million away from getting to that $1 billion mark. Will it get to it? I don't know if it will. I think it's going to get too close. It might get past Avengers Endgame, but I think that's about it, man. Again, it'll just depend on what happens over the next couple of weeks. We got Labor Day weekend coming up in a couple of weeks, which should help it out in particular here, because, like I said, there isn't a whole lot of big new releases to come in and combat it overall. I mean, next weekend obviously is the biggest release, is Coyote vs. Acme, which I don't know how good that's going to do. I mean, I'm not saying that the movie's going to be terrible or anything. Far from it. I think the movie's going to be excellent. I had a chance to go see it today. I didn't do it. I missed out my opportunity to get down there before the movie started, so I'm kind of bummed on that. But I'm really curious to see how that movie is going to do, because you have a studio that really have not made. I mean, they haven't. They're not have the marketing campaign that something like Warner Brothers or Disney or Paramount or Universal or all these other companies do. I mean, the word of mouth, I would think, would help the movie out in particular here. I think it'll do better than The Day the Earth Blew Up the year before. I don't think it's going to be like a big, gargantuan $20 to $25 million hit in particular. If it is, that'll be awesome. I would love to see that happen with that movie. I'm going to say probably, maybe, at the very least, somewhere between, I don't know, maybe $5 to $10 million at the least. I mean, the box office really wouldn't matter at that point, because even if the movie doesn't do well, it's the fact that we're getting it. That's great enough, but this thing will have a great cult following over the years if the movie doesn't perform as well as it definitely should. Because I think it definitely deserves to do very, very well. It should be a big hit overall. It should give Warner Brothers this movie's success should give Warner Brothers the biggest middle finger possible before the next big middle finger when they sell to Paramount. But on top of Coyote vs. Acme, we've got The Dog Stars, the Ridley Scott movie, which we're just seeing promotions for this week starting, so that's not a good sign for that particular film. Like I said, I don't think any of the big new releases next week are going to be blockbusters overall. I would like to think Coyote vs. Acme will do better than The Dog Stars, but truth be told, I really don't know. Because I really don't think Dog Stars is going to do that very well either. But we'll see what happens overall. I don't think either one of them is going to combat Spider-Man Brand New Day. I think it'll stick around for the top spot for at least the next 2 weeks. And then probably the next big competition for it will probably be when Practical Magic 2 comes out on September 11th. But I don't know. That's just my thinking right now. So we'll see what happens there. So anyway, let's try to find something here, because, yeah, like I said, we're slim pickings for some stories this week. So last week, when I finished recording the episode of the Reviewing Network Live that aired, the news broke that Hayden Panettiere had died at the age of 36 years old, which really just bummed me out, man, because I was such a fan of Hayden Panettiere. Unfortunately, I don't think she ever got a real opportunity to really advance as an actress in general here. She's been in a lot of stuff that I think was really close to her getting to that point, not just with Heroes, and also she was in the Scream movies and Nashville. I really like Nashville, even though I'm not a big country music person, but in terms of her movies that she did after the success of Heroes, it didn't really feel like anybody really had a good indication of what to do with her as an actress in particular, and she would star in these lesser films like I Love You, Beth Cooper, which is a movie that I've come to go around to, but then she would do stuff like, Alpha and Omega, which is a really terrible movie. They put her in Hoodwink 2, which didn't turn out to be great. The Scream movies, she was in those films. Yeah, it really did feel like Hollywood didn't really know what to do with her, and of course, we're still trying to figure out what ended up happening to her. Apparently, she died of cardiac arrest, and the police said that there were no findings of foul play, and an autopsy performed the following day saw that there were no signs of trauma. But then there's also a whole story going on with this whole thing in particular. She had been through you realize that she'd been through a lot in her life, man. When you really look back at what happened to her, like. Just recently, she wrote a book talking about struggling with addiction. She had postpartum depression, surviving sexual harassment and assault, domestic violence in her life, exploitation as a child star, a traumatic childbirth, and then the separation from her daughter. The fact that her and her mother didn't get along for the longest time. The devastating loss of her younger brother Jansen in 2023. So yeah, unfortunately, she went through a lot in her life, and it's just tragic to hear about this whole thing. When you're a child actress. And so you've come along, and you've had your success as a child star, and then you've had the troubles that usually follows child stars, and the fact that you're trying so hard to keep it together and keep your success going, but you find yourself caught in the situations of a child star where you have a lot of trouble basically figuring out how to. How do you keep it going at this point? We've seen this happen so many times with other child actors from back in the day. Sometimes to the worst possible ways. Look at what happened with Amanda Bynes, her career. Look at what happened to her career every time she tried to make a comeback, and then she didn't. She kept getting into trouble overall. We just had Michelle Trachtenberg happen recently when she died, which was tragic. It's weird because there was a long time when she really didn't have. There was a long time when you didn't hear from her all that much, but then when she comes back into the fold, you think that, okay, this is a way to come back into it, and then you find out all this trauma she went through here. Yeah, people don't realize that child stars really do get a bad rap in Hollywood, especially mostly because of their parents, because of the fact that the parents really do see the kids not just having fun acting, but they see it as a way to make a lot of money. We've seen a lot of stories where child actors, sometimes their money that they make as a child doesn't even get to them because the parents either spend it or sort of keep it away from them. And it's just like, it's a tragic thing. It's a tragic thing that happens to these actors, and we've seen it time and time again. And so now here you go again with this in particular here, and it does lead into something I want to cover with. Hold on one second. Yeah, that was a chat from somebody on Facebook, but it was not important. But it's interesting because you see this all the time. You used to see this a lot back in the 80s and 90s with with child actors and people who are on these hit TV shows that are either getting stalked, abused, getting attacked by people on there, and you think sometimes they get killed because of that. We know what happened with Rebecca Schaefer and Judah Barisi from All Dogs Go to Heaven and The Land Before Time. The tragic story with her. All these different things going on and all that, and then there was it's weird because like between the mid 1990s and like the early 2020s, we really didn't get those type of stories anymore. Every once in a while we get one or two of them, but they weren't as prolific as they were in the 80s and 90s, and that's just really something where it's just like, it never goes away. This stuff never really goes away, and hearing more and more about what happened to Hayden, it's just kind of like, it's really depressing. It's really depressing to see what happens, and honestly, that dream of yours going out there and wanting to become a big star in particular as a kid, and you have it happen, and then this is the consequences you have to deal with here, and it's unfortunate, but there's still a lot going on with Panettiere in particular, and of course this week it's been all about her, everyone reminiscing about her, but not only that, you've got all this drama going around with her family, and particularly her mother, and also other outlets out there. You have all these other child actors who are coming out there and saying that, hey, you got to stop this shit, man. You got to prevent this from getting out of control here. And I've got a couple stories here that kind of relate to that. So let's start with her mother, because I'm just reading this news story today that just came out about how Hayden Panettiere's mother blasts Gayle King after CBS host criticizes her reaction to daughter's death. This is from The Hollywood Reporter. And it says that Leslie Vogel, Hayden Panettiere's mom, is slamming Gayle King after the CBS Mornings host criticized her response to her daughter's death. I was very, very hurt and deeply disappointed in the lack of professionalism, the lack of compassion in slamming someone who's lost 2 children without even a modicum of consideration, Vogel said during a recent interview with the Daily Mail regarding King's comments. No one reached out to me before, she added. It's shameful. It's how do you say this word? Unconscionable to me. Yeah, I couldn't understand the saying of this word here, but the Hollywood Reporter has reached out to CBS Mornings for comments, but did not hear back at the time of publication. Panettiere, an actress known for her roles in Heroes Nashville and the Scream franchise, died last Sunday at 36. Following her death, Vogel spoke to NBC News on Tuesday, where she criticized her daughter's on-again, off-again boyfriend, Brian Hickerson, and felt her daughter lost her way. And I think this is the same person that is in another story. Yeah, I'm going to get to this story too, because it's tragic. It's tragic what's been going on with all this stuff coming out this week. But it said that, so Vogel spoke to NBC News on Tuesday saying, this person in her life that we've been trying to get rid of for quite some time was with her at her death, and that was Brian Hickerson. I think Hayden was an amazingly talented person in so many departments, and I think young people who grew up in the entertainment industry, it's a struggle and it's a very challenging industry, and it's not unusual for them to sadly find the wrong path, which is true. Like we just talked about some big ones here. Looking at a story on the side here about a former Disney child actress, Raquel Lee, alleging that Disney was negligent in on-set sexual abuse. I think she was in the Proof Point, I think it was. Yeah, the Proof Point, and that's the story that they're talking about there. But yeah, it's unfortunate, man. It's just unfortunate that a lot of these actors and actresses that start off as kids go through this every single time, almost every single time. But then the following day, during Wednesday's CBS Mornings broadcast, Gayle King criticized Vogel for focusing too much on her daughter's struggles amid her death. You know, guys, you read this, and all I can think is, thanks, Mom, for nothing. It makes me sad that the opportunity that you had after your daughter's death, and that's what you choose to leave us with. Which, that comment really is, I think that really is something where it's just kind of like, I mean, what else do you want her to say, Gayle? I mean, honestly, like, it's just, she just lost her daughter. And, and I've talked about it. She had Panettiere did have an estranged relationship with her mother, which was in her recent book, This Is Me, A Reckoning. And she talked about it in that book as well. And even said in an interview with The Hollywood Reporter how she opened up about the challenges of delving into her childhood and relationship with her mother while writing the book. Having to touch on everything about my relationship with my mother, that was one of the hardest things to talk about. Panettiere said, while writing it, I realized even more so much of how much of a toll it took on me. Page 6 reported in May that Vogel had chosen the non-contact route with Panettiere after 20 years of trauma and on the advice of professionals. And, if you've had a bad relationship with your family, that makes sense because you want to get the toxic people out of your life. It's just like, it sucks that you had a bad relationship with your family in particular, and sometimes you do got to keep your distance away from them. Honestly, it sucks, but you know what? That's just the way the world is, unfortunately. All families go through that. Hell, I've had some family members that have gone through that over the course of my life that I've known them. It's just like, it's just something that happens, man. It's unfortunate, but situations like this, you can understand why you can understand why everyone in the situation feels like you can understand why Hayden and her mother felt this way this past year, with her, starting with Hayden with her book, and then now with all this with Leslie Vogel. But it's just unfortunate. It's just an unfortunate situation that happened, and it just goes to show you that essentially you gotta be smarter out there, just in how you do things in particular. But there's a couple of other stories here, and there was one that I just found in the related stories here that I want to touch on. And going back to her boyfriend, Brian Hickerson, this is another story from the Hollywood Reporter, and it says, the brother of Hayden Panettiere's boyfriend revealed that Brian Hickerson administered Narcan to the actor after both found her unconscious at a South Carolina townhouse on Sunday. Zach Hickerson wrote to TMZ on Friday, giving the outlet a detailed account of what he experienced the day that the Heroes and Nashville actress was found unresponsive in the Airbnb in Greenville, South Carolina, where the on-off couple had just arrived. Brian Hickerson dated Panettiere on and off since 2018. He was arrested several times in the subsequent years for domestic abuse and at one point pleaded no contest to 2 felony charges related to an assault against Panettiere. A heavily redacted incident report from the Greenville Police Department released this week revealed details of the brothers' reaction to Panettiere's death. After first responders attempted but failed to revive Panettiere, Brian Hickerson became very emotional, according to the report. He also showed authorities a bag containing medication he said she was taking. Zach Hickerson reached out to TMZ to clarify the public report on what he experienced on Sunday so that he can now mourn without additional noise, chaos, and misinformation being created and propagated by the media as well as the public. There's a lot of assumptions, speculations, and accusations currently swirling, he said in a statement, which TMZ published on Friday. The truth will come out as the authorities complete and release additional details from the investigation, and that is important because the people who loved and adore Hayden deserve the truth. Zach said that on Sunday morning he attended the church service and on his way exchanged messages with Brian. They planned to get lunch and played indoor golf together after the service. When he left church, he called and texted both Panettiere and his brother. He said he assumed they had fallen back asleep, so he drove to the Airbnb where the two were staying in Greenville, where the brother's grandmother also lives. He said he did not have the door code and was unable to enter. A loud knock on the door woke his brother, he said. Both Brian and Panettiere had been asleep on the fold-out couch in the townhouse's living room. When we went in and tried to wake Hayden up for lunch, we realized she was unconscious, he recalled. I immediately called 911 and Brian gave her Narcan. We then jointly performed CPR while 911 was on speaker until fire and EMS arrived. At that point, we watched as they tried every measure possible to save her life. Our Narcan bottle was reported to have been seen at the scene of the actor's death, and reports emerged that the first responders had discussed an overdose. The account from the younger brother of Panettiere's boyfriend and longtime abuser confirms that Panettiere was potentially the victim of a drug overdose. Man, like, reading this again is just getting to me, man. This whole thing could have easily been prevented, and it's just kind of like, there's reason to believe that her boyfriend was in on this whole thing. thing. Maybe he obviously didn't know what was going to happen, but it's just kind of like this dude could probably find himself in jail for accidental death, involuntary manslaughter, or criminally negligent homicide. I mean, this could definitely be something where I think the boyfriend here gets time in jail at this point. I mean, that's something where it's just kind of like you gave her Narcan before she died, and you didn't know that if you don't know if she was taking something already, and it's just really it's just unfortunate. It's just really a shame of what happened in particular. Just reading about this again just gave me like. I couldn't even finish the article here. There's a little bit more here, but it's just kind of like it really bugs me, man. It looks like the boyfriend was part of the reasoning why this happened. Was more part of the reasoning why this happened than most people would probably expect it to be. It did lead out to a call from several former child actresses who are basically saying, hey, this should give you an indication that, hey, this isn't going away anytime soon. This hasn't gone away. This still continues to happen. Because I got this story here from the Hollywood Reporter where there's a group of Hollywood actors out there basically saying, hey, we need to come up here and do something here because this is getting ridiculous. So it says here, Anna Paquin, Christy Carlson Romano, and Melissa Gilbert are calling on Hollywood to protect child actors following the deaths of Hayden Panettiere, Michelle Trachtenberg, and Devay Chase. Panettiere's death at age 36 last Sunday prompted the three actresses, who were child stars themselves, to take their concerns public. Trachtenberg died at 39 in February 2025, while Chase died in July at 35. It is not a coincidence that so many former, specifically pre-sexualized female child stars have profoundly sad lives and untimely ends. We were not as protected by the systems that look great on paper as we were supposed to be. Paquin wrote on Instagram Friday she rose to fame at 11 years old for her film debut in 1993's The Piano, which earned her an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. R.I.P., HP, MT, and DC, and too many others. It's a strange small club we belong to, and you are worthy of support no matter how our industry makes us feel, Paquin continued. Literally DM me. I believe you and I will stand by your side. You aren't alone. Let's have each other's backs. It might make public disclosure less terrifying. The True Blood alum added in a separate post, one more thing. As an adult, I've had the pleasure of working on productions where the welfare and mental health of young performers was handled incredibly carefully, especially around material that was intense. It is possible to holistically look at the kids on set and tell complex and sometimes upsetting stories. It just happens to be the top priority of the production. Earlier this week, Elle published an essay by Romano, who appeared in 1996's Everyone Says I Love You as a child before becoming a teen Disney star with a role in Even Stevens and voicing Kim Possible, where she compared child stardom to the degenerative brain disease chronic traumatic encephalopathy. I have trouble with these words. CTE, but I need to figure out what this last word is, how to pronounce this last word. Encephalopathy. It's a complicated word, but it's CTE. I mean, CTE, of course, is mostly associated with sports athletes and all that type of stuff, but as it says here in the article, the former child actors exist in a category the world does not know how to hold. We are children when the public wants to feel protective of us, professionals when the industry wants to profit from us, and sports celebrities when we eventually show symptoms of having been both. Romano wrote in part, early fame is like CTE, not as a diagnosis, as a way of thinking about repeated impact. We now have language from youth sports, protocols, helmets, parents worried about concussions, but we have almost no language for what happens when stress, scrutiny, rejection, adult pleasure, and the collapse of privacy becomes the architect of childhood. She added, young performers are still treated as exceptions. Lucky exceptions, cute exceptions, talented exceptions, exceptions whose labor power is one of the most profitable storytelling machines in the world. Where their mental needs are treated as inconvenient or irrelevant, social work be damned. Gilbert also shared a lengthy post on Substack Saturday where she asked, why are these three sweet, wildly talented, vibrant, vital young women gone? Gilbert landed her breakout role at just 9 years old, playing Laura Ingalls Wilde on Little House on the Prairie from 1974 to 1983. I did not know Hayden personally and only worked briefly with Mishi and Devay. It feels personal because I was them. We were all members of the same tribe, female former child performers. Where one of us dies, it runs through all of us like an electrical current. When three of us die so close together, something is very, very wrong. We all know the stories of how the entertainment industry uses, abuses, exploits, and then throws away its youngest. But for some reason, this trend is getting worse. She later added, where is our union in all this? Where is the collective outrage? Where are the regulations? Where is the protection of privacy? it really seems like no one cares enough to enact real change, at least not until the next death, and everyone talks about how sad they are and how we must do something, and then they forget and get on with their lives until it happens again and again and again. Yes, addiction is a real disease. Family dysfunction is real. PTSD is real. In actors, all these things are assets. They enable us to access emotion and share it with an audience, but when it comes to children, it should be treated tenderly, protectively, respectively, and in a way that is as limited as possible. And listen, we all know that Hollywood is filled with a lot of scumbaggy people. Some of them are running these studios. But, yeah, I think these people make an excellent point where it's just like, something needs to be done about this whole thing because it's been going on for the longest time. You have these actors, these bright young talents getting killed off at the prime of their... as way too young. And it really is something where it's just kind of like, who's protecting them? Like, is there anybody out there that really cares about protecting these people out there? We've seen examples where there has been some of that, but it just feels like they're kind of afraid to go out there and kind of do anything about it. And I would like to think that hopefully after what happened with these three actresses, Michelle Trachtenberg, Daveigh Chase, and Hayden Panettiere, I think there should be a concern out there. There should be a more of a reasoning out there to get something out there to fix this problem in particular. It's going to be tough to do, but it's something that has to be done at this point because, yeah, you're seeing a lot of these young people dying before they even get to the point where they can become these great actresses and all. Like, it's just like, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that this has been happening and all that. And sadly, the truth is, it's going to keep happening until someone finally stands up and says, hey, enough is enough. We need to do something to fix this. Like, again, I don't know when that's going to happen, but hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later. But so there you go. That's really all I had to say about that in particular. It's just something that really got to me. Like, I mean, this has been a death that's really affected me for the longest time. This is probably the most effective death I've had in a long, long time. Like I didn't know Hayden Panettiere as a person and all that. I did see her a lot, and, I saw the potential for a great actress, and unfortunately, Hollywood really didn't have much to do with it. Didn't really give her much to do. They would just keep putting her in these lackluster projects and not really giving her a chance to really shine as an actress overall. And even when they did, they didn't really do much with her after the fact. But yeah, it's unfortunate. It's just unfortunate indeed. And like I said, hopefully something will happen and something will change pretty soon. But I sincerely doubt that's going to happen anytime soon. But so anyway, that's the stuff I wanted to cover with Hayden Panettiere. There was one other thing that got to me this week, and especially with what's been going on, because this is something related to the Paramount Warner Brothers merger. And yeah, this week in particular has been some rough news in particular, especially with people that you think would be behind the idea of shutting this whole thing down so jobs aren't lost. But nope, they want to keep their jobs protective, and the check's clear from the people that you should not be holding responsible for. You should be holding responsible for trying to kill the Hollywood industry. So it seems like more and more there is a lot of corporations and companies and people coming out in support of the Paramount Warner Brothers merger, even though they're the ones that literally are begging these studios, to not go straight to streaming because it's going to kill your business. The cinema industry, every single cinema chain is behind the whole thing. Everything is behind this merger now. Cinemark, AMC, Regal, you name it. They're all coming in now and saying that, oh yeah, we're supporting this all the way. Even the people that are supposed to prevent this from happening, your Democratic leaders like Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom, they're just kind of like, no, we think that a settlement should be made. But here's the problem with this: a settlement means the merger goes through, regardless of what happens there. So, no, a settlement should not be the thing you're going through here. And if you're trying to get, and Gavin Newsom, if you're still going to try to run for president, you just failed miserably at it, because the fact that you came out and said, no, a settlement should be done at this point, yeah, I think you just cost yourself a chance to be the Democratic presidential nominee there. But that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is what happened with Mark Ruffalo and what's going on with him, because he's been the most outspoken critic so far of Paramount. And so earlier this week, Mark Ruffalo came out and said that he linked Paramount to Oracle's Israeli military ties, and because of this, the studios called him anti-Semitic. Now, I have the article right here, and it says right here, Ruffalo's post on Instagram highlighted Oracle's tie to the Israeli military, circling a clip of former Oracle chief Safra Katz talking up Oracle's tech at the Israeli-American Council National Summit in 2024 as it's related to Israel's war efforts in Gaza. In the clip, which was resurfaced over the past week by several social media accounts, the executive spoke about profoundly scary technologies the company had built that could be deployed. The Marvel actor added his own commentary, described the war as a genocide that was built on an apartheid system of oppression powered by Oracle. So because of this, the studio came out and said that his remarks were anti-Semitic. A spokesperson at Paramount took the normally unusual step of issuing a lengthy reply to Ruffalo, both calling for the temperature of the debate to be lowered, while also deeming the actor's remarks anti-Semitic. We are, as always, troubled when anti-Semitic tropes are invoked in a purported service of a business dispute. Bullshit! Like, if you really believe what he said was anti-Semitic, why don't you go ahead and take a look at your company's political beliefs? Because the people that are running Oracle, those are the people that are using a lot of anti-Semitism there. Words like genocide and apartheid applied to a corporate transaction aren't just wrong, they're a bridge too far, and they've cheapened the very real suffering those words are meant to describe. This doesn't deserve a response in kind, and to be clear, we don't tolerate prejudice of any kind against anyone. The studio rep elaborated, "This brings us to a moment to lower the temperature, not raise it. We'd rather build this than further than engage in such rhetoric. This simply exposes the true motivation of some who have advocated opposition to this transaction. On the other hand, our commitment to great content is matched by our commitment to acceptance." You're trying to get 30 films out there within a year. You can't put 30 films out there in a single year. Sorry, that's just not happening when you get this deal done. And they just keep going on with this whole thing over and over again. But now you have these companies coming out, like the CEO of Simon Wiesenthal Center, Jim Burke, defending Paramount and saying that words matter, and so does the willingness to draw a line when legitimate debate gives way to anti-Semitic tropes. We commend Paramount for speaking clearly and refusing to allow prejudice to masquerade as political or corporate criticism. Which basically, this whole thing basically means, hey, our check's cleared, so we're going to back Paramount no matter what. Listen, this whole thing has nothing to do with, which side you're on in the Gaza war. Like it has nothing to do with Israel. It has nothing to do with Pakistan. It has nothing to do with any of this type of stuff whatsoever. You want to know what this whole thing is about? This whole thing is simply and effectively the only reason that we're even talking about this whole thing is simply because of this. They are not calling out Mark Ruffalo for being anti-Semitic. They're doing it as an excuse to push the Paramount Warner Brothers merger through. That's all this is. It's a game. It's a game that you cannot allow this company to win. Because if you allow this to win, this is going to be even more disastrous than the Disney-Fox merger. And people, there's people out there that probably look at me and go like, well, you weren't like this with the Disney-Fox merger. How can you support that and not support what Paramount and Warner Brothers are doing? Because first of all, when Fox was purchased by Disney, it needed to happen because Fox was in such a terrible, terrible state with their studio, and it needed to happen. And Disney could at least run 20th Century. Disney can at least run 20th Century Fox better than what Paramount could do with Warner Brothers. But the big differences between Disney and Fox is that Disney's at least trying to use the Fox properties and have been successful in a number of different ways. Not everything has been successful, but they've been more successful than you would think. Paramount and Warner Brothers are not going to do that. They're going to keep saying, we want 30 films a year, when we know. We talked about this so many times. We know exactly what this merger is supposed to mean. You want to know what the merger is going to mean? Say goodbye to CNN the CNN that you know. Say goodbye to the John Oliver that you know. Say goodbye to Bill Maher. I mean, that's really what it's going to come down to here. Why do you think John Oliver only signed a 1-year extension? Because he knows that there's a possibility that Paramount is going to win this battle here, and that means he's getting out, but he's getting out before the getting's good. I mean, that just tells you, like, I would like to think that this merger is not going to happen because everyone's been so committed to making sure that this thing does not go through. But the last couple of weeks, seeing the people that should be right and front and center of this whole thing, basically coming out and saying that No, you need to settle this whole thing right now because a trial will be too costly for our company in particular. There are jobs to be saved here. Well, guess what? Those jobs aren't going to be saved if this merger goes through. Sorry to tell you this, but that's the cold, honest truth here. That's really what it's all going to come down to. And if you're going to keep pretending that it's not going to be that way, then you clearly have been bought off by the juices of the heads at Paramount now. Because it's just like, it's just the worst part about this whole thing is that Paramount's going to eventually get what they want. The baby is going to get what they want in the end because nobody out there, except the people who are trying their best to try to stop this, is going to stop it. They're going to pretend like, oh yeah, we'll try to stop it, and then sooner or later they're going to get the checks from Paramount. No, they're going to get the checks from the people that want this to go through, and that's how they're going to be like, oh well, I've suddenly taken a realization now that this actually isn't as bad as everyone makes it out to be. No, because your check finally cleared. That's really what it comes down to here, and it's just like, it's just. I mean, I really don't have much more to say about this, but that whole thing that happened this week with Mark Ruffalo really pissed me off. Like, it really pissed me off by the fact that you have people literally calling for a boycott of him simply because of the fact that he came out talking about something that should not be going through, and yet people are going to continue to push it through because money talks in this world, and that's the only reason why it's happening. It's just unfortunate. It's just unfortunate, and right now, I'm really still not confident that this thing will be stopped. Baby's gonna get what they want. The money's gonna come through, and then 10 years later, and then 5 years from now, when the deal turns out to be a bad deal, we could be like, we told you so, because we've been telling you not to do this, but that's just the way the world is right now. You try to tell people that this is a bad idea, and then they're just like, "Oh, you get out of here." The first Trump presidency was bad, but surely it can't be worse the second time around. How's that working 2 years later for you? Not very well. Not very well at all. So there you go. That's my thoughts on that whole thing in particular. It just really bugs me, man. So, is there anything else going on right now that's worth talking about here? Let me double check and see if I got something for you. Well, because I brought it up, I might as well talk about this, but Paramount and the state attorney generals will meet Monday to discuss the settlement of an antitrust case. So, this is from Variety, so I might as well briefly talk about this. Paramount's guidance representatives are expected to meet on Monday with the California Attorney General's office to discuss a potential settlement of the state's antitrust case, according to two sources familiar with the situation. Paramount has been pushing hard for a deal to allow its $111 billion merger with Warner Bros. Discovery to close. The deal is currently on hold pending a March trial in federal court in Oakland. Attorney General Rob Bonta has said that he is open to settlement negotiations, but has also said that Paramount has thus far been unwilling to offer the kind of structural remedies that would be needed to satisfy the state's concerns. In a statement Friday night, Attorney General Rob Bonta reiterated his openness to a settlement, providing Paramount is willing to consider robust structural remedies. As I've said before, generally for all my cases, I prefer to resolve disputes in the boardroom, not the courtroom. As I've always said, if the opposing party in litigation wants to meet in good faith to make a sincere effort to resolve the case, we'll meet. And as I've further said, any potential discussions about the Paramount-Warner Brothers merger will be unprotected absent robust structural remedies on the table that address our concerns. Bonta also reiterated his position that the merger is bad for consumers. As it stands today, the proposed Warner Brothers-Paramount merger will mean higher costs, less competition, lower wages, job cuts, and fewer movies and TV sales. This merger violates long-standing federal antitrust laws, and we are committed to enforcing the law. Bonta led a 12-state coalition to challenge the merger in July, arguing that it would illegally contract the marketplace for theatrical distribution and basic cable. The merger would consolidate two of Hollywood's 5 legacy studios, and two of the top three cable programmers. Under federal rules, the two sides will have to at least try to settle the case in front of a magistrate judge at some point. At a hearing this week, Judge Araceli Martinez-Ogian asked the parties to identify 2 potential magistrates who could oversee mediation by next Wednesday. A parade of interested parties have recently come out in favor of the settlement, including the Directors Guild of America, IATSE, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, and Cinema United, the trade company representing theater change. Earlier this week, you've heard the Attorney General himself say he preferred to settle in the boardroom, not the courtroom, Governor Newsom said on Friday. I think there's some universal sentiment here, if that's possible. The question is that possible? And what's the best deal? That has to be worked through. That's a process that's unfolding, I assure you, in real time. Paramount has pledged various commitments to try to get a deal done, including a promise to make 30 films a year for the next 3 years and keep them exclusively in theaters for at least 45 days. Bonter's office has argued that such behavioral remedies have proven impossible to enforce in the past. The Writers Guild of America has filed its own lawsuit, which is set to be tried along with the state's cases next March. The WGA is also a party to the stipulation that, as a pop-up, just popped up here. Go away, Liberty Mutual guy. Yeah, it's Doug from Liberty. It's Doug from Liberty Mutual. Just like, switch and save on your car insurance. Get a quote here. I don't want a quote. I don't even have a car. But anyway, the Writers Guild of America has filed its own lawsuit, which is set to be tried along with the state's case next week. The WGA is also a party to the stipulation that puts the merger on hold until the trial, and would have be involving the parties as are in. I cannot talk right now. When can I ever talk, really? And would have be the way this is presented on here, proofreading variety guy. Listen to this. The WGA is also a party to the stipulation that puts the merger on hold until the trial, and would have be involved. And would have been involved. The parties would have been involved. Okay, I think what happened here is A, would have been involved instead would have be involved, and there should be a period somewhere here, I think. And would have be involved. The parties are aiming to reach a global resolution. That's how it's said on here on the Variety article. A WGA spokesperson did not respond to a request for comment. So looking at and going back to the Gavin Newsom comment here. Earlier this week, you heard the Attorney General himself saying he preferred the settlement in the boardroom, not the courtroom. I think there's some universal sentiment here, if that's possible. The question is that possible? And what's the best deal that has to be worked through? Maybe I'm giving him a bad rap for saying that he's more behind this with Karen Bass and all that, but no, I think Karen Bass more in particular is at fault for joining the side of them. I think Gavin Newsom is more of a guy that's trying his best to try to be the peacekeeper here. So he's not really coming out in support of this whole thing. Even he is saying, what's the best deal? That has to be worked through, and they don't know how to do that. So I'll give him credit for that in particular here. And, but yeah, I just saw that article while I was looking up some stuff here in particular. So they're going to meet tomorrow, and really, I don't know exactly what they expect to be in a settlement here, except the fact to just let the baby have what they want and merge already, because they're so afraid that Paramount is going to go move out somewhere else. It's just like the dude is David Ellison's trying everything he can to get what he wants, but you have to realize because David Ellison's acting like a spoiled child, you have to realize that we're not going to give you everything you want because we think it's going to be harmful to you. That's why as a kid you don't get to eat all the candy you want to. Your parents have to come in and say, hey, you can't have all this candy. You can only have a little bit here. Yeah, you can cry and bitch and moan about it all you want to, but you know what? When you're going to thank me when you're older and you're much healthier than you think you could be, and much smarter than you think you are right now. But I don't know. But that's just me in particular. It's just they're I heard the latest one is just they're trying to move to Austin, Texas, which, I mean, hey, Corey and Martin from Double Toasted and Spill.com will have a field day with that one if that actually happens. But I also heard Tennessee at one point here. I really don't know what a settlement could be like here, but it feels more and more like if they settle, it basically means that David Ellison gets what he wants, and the Hollywood system is just completely fucked over. So I'm hoping that's not the case here, but I don't know. Right now, it's just way too complicated right now for a situation here. So I think that's about it, because I'm trying to look for any other news stories we're talking about here, and there really isn't a whole lot there. Yeah, I think we're done this week, honestly. I think that really is something where, yeah, I really don't think there is something there that we're talking about. But, I could talk about the Steelers, but I'm trying to hold that down as much as I can because, let's just say that I've had some thoughts about how I don't like the way the Steelers are being run in my head, and I haven't really come out to say what they are just yet because it's still very young. The preseason is still there's still a little bit of the preseason left. We've got a game Thursday night, so I'm holding my judgment for now, but I'll just say right now, I'm not thrilled. I'm not happy, Bob. Not happy at all. So yeah, I think we're done for this week. So, with all that said, let's just go ahead and get to some recommendations this week, because there are a lot of good stuff that comes out this week. So most of it I've actually gotten already. So if you didn't see this week's episode of Movie Stop, you might have missed out the fact that my Walmart has a lot of next week's new releases out there. And I spent a lot of money. I spent about $140 on stuff that I bought there. But keep in mind, 2 of those were the same movie. I bought the Blu-ray and the 4K for The Mandalorian and Grogu, which I enjoyed that movie. I thought it was fun overall. It's definitely not one of the better Star Wars movies, but it's certainly a lot better than people made it out to be. I mean, people made that film come out to be like one of the worst things they've ever seen. Is like one of the worst things related to Star Wars ever. Which, no, the correct answer to that is, and always will be Attack of the Clones. Sorry, suck it, prequel lovers, who used to be prequel haters. But yeah, it's just. Yeah, I'm not joining that bandwagon anytime soon. I did not like Attack of the Clones, but I did enjoy The Mandalorian and Grogu. I thought it was overall a very fun film overall. I enjoyed it very much. I thought it was a very solid film. Yeah, like I said, it's a really fun movie. Definitely not one of the better Star Wars movies in particular, but it's one that I still really enjoyed a lot of. So, where's my why is it not showing it on here? Yeah, it's not as bad as people make it out to be. It's not a bad movie at all. It's a fun, pulpy, 80s style summer escapism entertainment movie that I really enjoyed. So there was that, and then I also got Disclosure Day, which is the new Steven Spielberg movie. A movie I really did enjoy. I really enjoyed that one as well. I thought it was very well done, visually stunning to look at. I got the 4K version of it. I was supposed to get the Steelbook this week, but you notice how, it's not just all these it's not just Amazon. It's because Amazon and Walmart can't get their Steelbooks out there. The studios are basically just saying, fuck it, we're going to delay the Steelbooks now. Because you can get Disclosure Day on DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K this week, but if you want that Steelbook, you're going to have to wait until October to get it. And it's just kind of like, well, what's going on? Why aren't you what are you not telling us out there that you're getting these steelbooks delayed? Because not only that, the Supergirl steelbook got delayed this week, and the Project Hail Mary steelbook comes out in October too. So they're waiting months, and it kind of goes against everything that the studios have been doing as of late with their re-releases. They're really just like, we're going to put, the system now is that it's over 2 months after the movie comes out. That's when they usually start putting these movies out on Blu-ray. But now it's just like, we're not going to do that now with these movies in particular. Why? But Disclosure Day is definitely one I really like a lot. But my favorite of the bunch, one of my favorite movies of the year, I think it's actually my second favorite movie of the year, the surprisingly enjoyable The Sheep Detectives with Hugh Jackman. It's a movie where you have him dying as a farmer, and you have all these talking sheep. The 2 leads played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Chris O'Dowd, going to protect it, going to find out who the killer is, and it's a really great movie, man. I was so bummed that they didn't have the Blu-ray for it, but I grabbed the DVD version of it. It's a great movie. It's a really fun film. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out, because it's a very, very fun film overall. Really enjoyable film. Some catalog titles coming out this week. The Saint is getting a nice 4K steelbook. The underrated Val Kilmer movie which is based off the TV series of the same name. United 93 is coming out on 4K just in time for the 25th anniversary of September 11th, which that in and of itself is a 20th anniversary 4K release. I remember seeing that movie in theaters the first time around when that came out that weekend, because it was the first major motion picture made about September 11th. Everyone was talking about how, it's too soon to make a movie about 9/11, and 5 years really isn't that big of a deal overall. Plus, it's a great movie. It's Paul Greengrass, for God's sakes. I mean, the guy can usually do no wrong there. So it's coming out on 4K here. I don't know if I'm gonna rush out to go get this in particular. If I find it at a Barnes & Noble somewhere, or hell, maybe if I need it for the ABC Movie Buying Challenge, I could probably wait till then. But that's coming out on 4K this week. Anything else that I'm seeing here? You got new 4Ks for the Fast and Furious. Speed Racer, the series, is coming out on 4K, the original series. Practical Magic, because you got to get ready for the movie that everyone was clearly waiting for. No, they're not. Sorry, you're not going to convince me that people are demanding Practical Magic 2. But actually, by far, the biggest release of all coming out this week on Blu-ray and DVD. How can you go wrong with the complete series of Perfect Strangers? I mean, that's right, Perfect Strangers. The entire series is not only coming out on its own DVD set, but it's coming out on Blu-ray too. So you can do the Dance of Joy and listen to that theme song over and over again in pristine high definition. And the Blu-ray is going to cost you a little bit. $105 is very expensive, but the DVD set's only $50. So either way, I think it's worth the price. I think it's worth the price on DVD. I don't know if I want to go ahead and update it for get it on Blu-ray for $105. I think that'd be a little too much, but who knows? Maybe it'll come down in price. Maybe it'll be one of those Groove Entertainment sales that's going on right now. That's going on every weekend, because right now they had some good deals. I've touched on them for a while now. So some of the ones they have this weekend, which end today, they have some weekend Blu-ray deals here. Like you can get Samurai Jack, the complete series, for $30, Duck Dodgers for $18, the Shrek series for $25. They have some 4K deals on One Battle After Another for $15. That's a pretty good deal for that. So is Hamlet for $15. They have some weekend DVD deals. Like if you wanted to get Steven Universe for $35, it's $35. Fuller House, the complete series, is $25. Silicon Valley is $30. Pinky and the Brain is $20. So it's some pretty good deals overall. Some good 4K deals, 3 for $33. Blu-rays, 3 for $25. 4Ks, 3 for $60. A lot of good stuff overall. A lot of good prices on all these different items here. GrooveEntertainment.com. No, they are not sponsoring this channel, but they are definitely a great service you should go to if you want to look for some good prices on some good movies. So other than that, though, yeah, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Reviewing Network Live. Like I said, a very, very slow news week. I covered the stuff I felt was kind of important here, but yeah, other than that, though, it has been a relatively slow week for news, and hey, we got you something there. So depending on how much the editing I do here, this could get to at least an hour, if not under an hour. So we'll see what happens there. But anyway, that's going to do it for this week. And with all that said, thank you so much for joining me on this. Oh, quick reminder that Thursday night, we are going to have the Reviewing Network live Sunday Night NFL Rewatch preseason special, where we have the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Buffalo Bills. That game kicks off at, I think it's a 7 o'clock game on, as I remember correctly. Let me just double check to make sure here. Yeah, 7 o'clock on Thursday night, we'll see the Steelers taking on the Buffalo Bills in Highmark Stadium, the first primetime game for Highmark Stadium, the new Highmark Stadium in Buffalo, New York. So looking forward to doing that. Game might be rough because it is the Steelers, and as we've seen so far this preseason, it has not been off to the most promising of starts, but we'll see what happens there. But not only will we have the game there, but we will also have for you the first preseason rankings for the year. And then the following week on September is on the weekend on sometime during the week is probably on Wednesday, September September the 2nd. Wednesday, September the 2nd will be the first episode of the new season of the Sunday night, the NFL Network pre-shows. We get you set for the preseason for the Week 1 action, and of course I won't be there for Week 1 because I'll be on vacation during that week. So, but yeah, like I said, Thursday night, our first ever preseason game on the Reviewing Network Live Sunday Night NFL Rewatch. It will be the Steelers taking on the Bills. We will get to see the first look at the power rankings for the first week of the preseason. So I hope you will join me for that. That's going to be Thursday night. You better be there. Blow a kiss, everybody. Good night. That's a little Saturday Night Live Bensonhurst dating game reference to you folks out there. But anyway, that's going to do it here, folks. I didn't want to bring that up before we got on out of here. But with all that said, thank you so much for joining me. And if you like this and want to see more videos like this, hit that like button, subscribe button, notification button. Check out some of the other episodes we've done, as well as the last episode we did. And I will see you guys on the next episode next Sunday night. So until then, thank you so much for watching. Actually, I'll see you Thursday night for the Sunday Night NFL Rewatch. But I'll see you at some point over the next week. So until then, thank you so much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you guys next time. Till then, we are out.